It's been pretty embarrassing to see Donald Trump and his MAGA stooges, J.D. Vance, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we're going to get to in a second, try to land some sort of political blow on Kamala Harris, some sort of attack that they can get to break through. But all of their criticisms fall so flat and are, frankly, like I said, embarrassing because they're not legitimate. We see Donald Trump try to say that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are soft on crime, but Donald, you're the convicted felon. You're the one who sent a violent mob to attack the Capitol and Capitol police officers. We've seen Donald Trump, as of lately, and to not much success, try to criticize Kamala Harris on her handling of the economy within the Biden administration. But what Donald Trump has forgotten, because his brain is falling apart, and we see that more and more every day, but what he's forgotten is only 4 years ago, he was crashing our economy. And not only did President Biden and Vice President Harris recover it from the gutter that Donald Trump left it in, it is now booming. We see jobs up. We see the stock market hitting all-time highs every other week. And not only that, not only are numbers up, but inflation is down to its lowest point since 2021. The economy under the Biden-Harris administration is booming. And so Donald Trump has no legitimate criticisms. And one that he started with and quickly failed at, it seems that he is returning to, and that is the border. Yes, Donald Trump and his stooges, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, think that they can criticize Kamala Harris for an unsecure border, but again, what they fail to realize and remember is the only reason we don't have a bipartisan border deal that was endorsed by the border union and supported by some of the most conservative Republicans in the Senate. The only reason we don't have that bill into law is because Donald Trump and the rest of his stooges, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And so when they tried to criticize Kamala Harris on the border and blame her for an unsecure border, it really falls flat and turns out to be embarrassing for them. And it is so embarrassing because their words, their actions can be used against them. And that is exactly what happened on the House floor to Marjorie Taylor Greene being called out for these just false attacks on Kamala Harris and really the hypocrisy of the MAGA movement at large. And it was so perfect, such a beautiful watch, that I want to check it out in its entirety.
She can fake it for the photo ops, but we know that Kamala Harris wholeheartedly supports the chaos at our border, the chaos in our streets, and the chaos in the families who have been victims of her open border policies. Border Czar Harris outlandishly compared ICE to KKK and radically called for the ICE to be abolished. She also posted the Minnesota Freedom Fund to bail out violent Black Lives Matter terrorists who burned down cities, looted stores, destroyed communities, and caused over $2 billion in damage to American communities all over America. Kamala Harris is not only the border czar, she is also the czar of chaos. And her policies have destroyed American.
You can always tell when we're getting closer to an election because these extreme members of the Republican Party, they literally turn up the volume on their xenophobia. And they're doing it again with H.R. 1371. They lie about immigration and public safety. I mean, when you look at studies, it shows that immigration is actually associated with lower crime rates. They fearmonger, they dehumanize, while they're also quoting scripture, which is kind of hypocritical. And they scapegoat asylum seekers, people who, just like my parents, want to seek a life of dignity and hope and have faithfully contributed to their community and to our collective economy.
Since being appointed by border czar by President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris has undoubtedly been a complete failure in her job and has destroyed our country by releasing a record-setting levels of criminals, rapists, and terrorists into our communities. Despite the attempts of the fake news media to whitewash her appointment as border czar, as Axios correctly reported, and they're now lying and say they never did, she was in fact labeled a border czar by nearly every major news outlet across the country. Border czar Kamala Harris said, "Do not come," yet proudly welcomed 11.5 million illegals from over 160 countries, including over 2 million known gotaways who completely evaded U.S. authorities. She stood by and allowed these people to come in and idly watched our children and women being raped by illegal alien criminals. She's not just allowing them to come, The policies of the administration allow the CBP One app to import over 400,000 illegals into American communities. Under her watch as border czar, this has happened.
As I walked in here, all I heard was what I hear in committee: constant criminalizing of immigrant communities. And so let me tell you, I rise in strong opposition to House Resolution 1371. What this is: more lies, more representations, and more inaccuracies. When the majority cannot pass bills, what do? They introduce blatantly political resolutions that consistently target powerful women of color. They are willing to vilify and misrepresent the sitting vice president of the United States for her diplomatic work to address the root cause of migration from Central America. If my Republican colleagues actually cared about immigration or border security, they would address the conditions that drive people to the southern border. They would pass spending bills that invest in foreign humanitarian assistance and international development programs, and they would participate in cooperative efforts to realize a world where people can build their life they want back at home. But they've done none of that.
As Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and the rest of the MAGA stooges want to push these lies against Kamala Harris, they're getting pushback. And it's not just from Democrats calling them out. It's not just from people like myself who make sure to point out the MAGA hypocrisy every day. Some members of the mainstream media are actually starting to do their jobs and criticize the lies of MAGA. But to supplement the mainstream media, which has many a time failed recently to call out Donald Trump's lies, Kamala Harris and her campaign are running an incredible ad across the country talking about the difference between her successes on the border and Donald Trump's failures. Because that's what they are. They are abject failures. And I want to check it out, and then we're going to talk about it.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. Kamala Harris prosecuted transnational gang members and got them sentenced to prison. Trump is trying to avoid being sentenced to prison. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
It's great to remind people that Donald Trump has already failed at these things, that he didn't succeed at securing our border because he didn't want to. It's not just because he was a failure as president, it's because he didn't want to succeed in fixing anything. Because that's not what the MAGA movement does. That's not what Donald Trump does. Donald Trump wants to complain and blame and push his problems on other people. That's what he's done his entire life. He refuses to take accountability for anything. And he refuses to be selfless in any act. And the job of governing is one of caring about other people and making sure that they are safe and protected and doing your job, something that Donald Trump doesn't want to do. He didn't want to fix the border in any way. He didn't want to see any security at the border or any comprehensive immigration reform. Why? Because Donald Trump wanted to continue to run on the issue. That's why in the 2018 midterms, we saw all of a sudden Donald Trump was talking about all these caravans, and the same thing happened in 2020. Because Donald Trump wants it as a political pawn, not as an issue that he actually cares about, because Donald Trump doesn't care about the issues. And I think that's such a perfect reminder, not only of the failures of Donald Trump as president that we've already seen, and the successes that Kamala Harris has had in all of her roles as a public official. We know that. But it's also a great contrast of the character of these two individuals. Someone in Kamala Harris who is focused on the issues, laser focused on the issues, and knows how to solve them because she's had experience doing so. And Donald Trump, who's had experience failing at the job and neglecting his responsibilities because he doesn't care. That's who Donald Trump is. He's someone who doesn't care. And that is an important reminder that we need to make sure that we're driving home during this election, because it is not just the contrast in the record, but it is the contrast in the character that is so key in this election, in my opinion. And that is why we need to continue to call out the MAGA hypocrisy. We need to point out their lies, not only because it's easy and because it's fun, but it's also a great reminder of what the truth is, that Democrats have had success when we work across the aisle, but unlike Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a part of the most dysfunctional Congress in modern American history, Republicans can't do so because they don't want to do so. Donald Trump doesn't want to succeed as president, and he didn't. So that's abundantly clear. Kamala Harris does. And that's why we're backing her. And that's why we're not going back. And if you agree, you want to be a part of this message, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join what we are building on this channel by leaving a like. The support really goes a long way, and it means the world to me. And until next time, I'll see you soon.